scared. And there's someone that I would hear on the radio every Friday, shamelessly telling people about Jesus. #1 radio show in San Diego, would get on there and spend 5-10 minutes airtime, fearlessly telling people how much he loved Jesus. And that impressed me, and I ran into him one day when probably wasn't the best day of his year, the best day of his life. I ran into him, and I told him how much that impressed me. And I asked him, I said, when we have an event here in North Park at this church, would you come and give your testimony? He said, right on, brother, I'll be there. And I called him up 2 years later. Without hesitation, he's here. So everyone welcome Mike Esparza from the Mikey Show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And you know, I know there's a lot of people that I'm going to be speaking to today that do not know the Lord, and I can relate to that. I didn't at one point either, and so there's a lot of people that I want to reach with my message. I hope that this speaker is as loud as it can be, and that there are people throughout this community. In fact, I wish that these speakers were connected to the entire city of San Diego to hear my story, because my story has so much to do with so many of you. So many of you have experienced what I experienced. It's difficult for me to tell my story. Every time I tell it, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten up and spoken and given my testimony. It's never easy to stand in front of adult people and tell them that at 5 years old I was sexually abused. That is never easy, and it never gets easier. But I tell you for a reason. I tell you because it was a big part of making me who I became, both negative and positive, okay? What happened to me when I was 5 years old had a very big impact on the negativity and the addiction that I eventually went to. Right now you see me standing in front of you, and if you'd never met me before, you see a lot of tattoos, and you may think to yourself, yeah, this guy looks like, you know, your typical tattooed kind of guy. The truth is, these tattoos were to cover sensitiveness, sweetness in my heart. I wanted to hide from you who I really, really am and who I really was, which was a sweet, sensitive person. I wanted you to think that I was a lot harder than I actually am because of who I really am. You see, when I was 5 and that happened to me, I had no way of processing that. There was just no way that I knew how to process it. And so what happened was that I had this immense sense of hurt because of what happened to me when I was 5. But because I was only 5, I didn't even have the mental capacity to explain to somebody what that meant. Hurt. I didn't know what that was. I'm 41 years old now. I can explain to you now what it is. At 5, I didn't know what hurt was. I just knew I had it inside of me. When I got to be a little bit older, and I mean that when I was 10 or 11 years old, there were other things that were happening in my life. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you can hear me, I'm going to tell you, there are some things that I will share with you during the course of my story that will not be as bad as whatever your story is. And there may be parts of my story that you say, that never happened to me. But when I was 10 years old, I had a very, very close relationship with my oldest brother, Mark. I have his birth date tattooed on my arm because he was just like a father to me. He was a father figure to me, my brother Mark. We lived in Yuma, Arizona, and my brother Mark lived in Tucson, Arizona. And I used to like to go and visit with him, and so my parents would take me, and they knew that that was a great way to motivate me. So they said, if you don't get good grades, you don't get to go visit your brother Mark. And I didn't get good grades, and I didn't get to go visit. The problem was that they left me alone while they went to go visit, and I was by myself in this home in Yuma, Arizona before the days of 911. And if anybody had been taking a look at our home, they noticed that there was no one in front of the house. There was no cars parked there, meaning that the house was either empty or there weren't many people there. On a Saturday afternoon, I remember a knock at our front door. And I went and looked, and there was a diamond-shaped mirror, or window, excuse me, on our front door, and I saw an adult man standing at that window. And he was mouthing to me And if you can't see me because you're way in the back, he was saying, open the door. And I was afraid, and so I ran into my bedroom, and I stayed in my bedroom, and I kept hearing him knocking on the door. And that went on for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then finally it stopped. But as you can imagine, that was a hard night for a 10-year-old to sleep. I didn't know if he was going to come back, I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know what his intentions were. That created in me a sense of fear. If you can hear me, I want you to know, and I want you to remember this one thing. If you remember anything that I tell you, I want you to remember this. Anger is not a real emotion. Anger is not a real emotion. Now you may be saying, oh yes it is, because I've been angry plenty of times. In fact, I was angry 5 minutes ago. I was angry 10 minutes ago. I was angry on the way over here. I'm angry now. What I mean to say by that is that anger is something that we have that masks 3 very real emotions: hurt, sadness, and fear. Okay? And the next time that you get angry, ask yourself, am I hurt? Am I sad? Or am I fearful? Or am I all 3? But I guarantee you that the next time that you're angry, or the last time that you were angry, if you ask yourself, which was I, you were one of them. Raise your hand if you have kids. When your kid runs out into the street and you go and you grab your kid and you go, don't you do that, don't you run out in the street. What are you really? You're afraid, you're scared. Anger is hurt, sadness, and fear. Now, I don't mean to tell you that it isn't okay to be angry, because it is okay to be angry. Anger is a real emotion. But the reason that I tell you that is because as I got older, I started to realize that I was full of anger. And the reason that I was full of anger is because I had a lot of hurt, sadness, and fear inside of me that I had no idea how to clean out like a wound. You see, the hurt, the sadness, and the fear that you have in your life, and every single one of us standing in front of me right now, every single one of you has got some hurt and some sadness and some fear from your background. And what I want you to know is that it's like dragging yourself on a motorcycle, if you've been in a motorcycle accident, across the pavement, and all that asphalt is underneath your skin, and it doesn't heal properly, and the skin goes over it. But I'll tell you what, if somebody touches it just right, it hurts, and we react to it. We get angry. And the reason that I think that it's so important for you to know that is because we live in a culture today that's extraordinarily hurt and sad and fearful.